When it comes to art from many parts of the world, the only artworks that we typically see here in US museums and galleries, for the most part, are those which are wholly traditional and thus emblematic of the cultures of the world, which is great. I do pre-modern, early modern history myself. I'm all about traditional art traditions. But we see these kinds of traditional cultures of the world kind of pieces, or we see those works which fall into rather narrow, particular conceptions about what's radical, experimental, conceptual, in just the right kinds of ways to be considered the right kind of contemporary art. What about all the other art being produced all around the world? In just the last few months in Okinawa, I've seen numerous exhibits, hall after hall after hall, of works by high school students, amateur enthusiasts, traditional practitioners, art students, University of the Arts professors, as well as by professional artists, some of whom are among the biggest names in all of Okinawan art history, and yet whom I still had never heard of. Today, in the next 10 minutes, I'd like to try to bring just a little bit, just a taste of what I've seen over there to you here. First, we need just a very brief introduction to Okinawa's history, as the historical context heavily colors Okinawan identity and Okinawan art today. Okinawa, for those who are unaware, is one of the Ryukyu Islands. They stretch between Taiwan and the southern end of mainland Japan. Though today a part of Japan, the Ryukyus were an independent kingdom for centuries, with their own distinctive cultural character, as distinct from China and Japan as Korea is also distinct from China and Japan in its cultural character and its independent history. Ryukyu's relationship with Japan got a little bit more complicated in the 17th and 19th centuries, and it's that period, that relationship, which is the focus of my dissertation work. But it was not until the 1870s, less than 150 years ago, that a newly westernizing, modernizing Japan declared the independent kingdom of Ryukyu to be abolished and annexed its territory, making the Ryukyu Islands truly become a part of Japan as Okinawa prefecture. These events are seen here in Ishikawa Mao's 2014 piece, Photo Scroll of Great Ryukyu, in which she got friends to volunteer to dress up and pose for some 18 scenes representing all of Okinawan history. On the right here we can see a Japanese official, in his modern European-style uniform and mustache, telling a group of Ryukyuan Confucian scholar bureaucrats that their kingdom is being abolished. The officials, in their distinctive colored court caps, unlike anything you'd see in traditional Japan, react with confusion, sadness, and anger. The island was devastated in the Battle of Okinawa in 1945. Many people say that Tokyo allowed Okinawa to become a battleground, sacrificing it in order to protect mainland Japan from invasion. Roughly 1/4 of the Okinawan population was killed. In the aftermath of the war, the island came under U.S. military occupation from 1945 until 1972, a whole 20 years longer than the rest of Japan. And still today, roughly 20% of the island's land area is taken up by U.S. military bases, which have a profound impact on daily life, culture, and of course politics. The Okinawa Prefectural Museum, which just reopened in a shiny new space in 2008, has been doing great exhibits of both a chronological history of Okinawan art, displaying many of the milestone works by many of the most key artists, and also a series of exhibits by individual artists. The current exhibit is of works by Makishi Tsutomu, also known as Tom Max, who passed away in 2015. The exhibit is titled Ambivalent, which I think is quite appropriate, as Tom Max shows both in his artworks and in his American-English pseudonym both a real fascination with the American military and football and certain other elements of very mainstream American culture, but also a strong opposition to the American military presence in Okinawa. These are but two of many works that Tom Max did in this style, and with similar motifs, showing a clear interest in the fine details of military technology, and in both U.S. and Imperial Japanese military pride, nationalism, and notions of masculinity. These works may be critical of U.S. military and Japanese military, but they also have a surface appearance of embracing and enjoying these aesthetics and themes, I think. If Tom Max were not that interested in military subjects, it would be difficult to take the time to really so meticulously paint a fighter jet with labels for every single aspect of the technology of how that jet works, yeah? But in the last few years, towards the very end of his life, Tom Max turned to making works far more explicitly critical of the U.S. military. Here, in one of 5 nearly identical works from his 2013 series Open Eyes, we see a pair of vertical takeoff and landing V-22 Ospreys, which have in recent years become one of the chief targets of local protest and opposition here in Okinawa. We see the word turbulence written out in English as the helicopter rotors of the Osprey stir up something, indicated here in splashes of ink wash. The bottom half of the work consists of some kind of heavy-duty military fabric, on which the artist has written, "My work is a self-portrait of who I am," again in English. We also see written here the word Futenma, the name of one of the most strongly opposed bases on the island. Henoko, the name of the site of a new base being built as we speak, despite significant local opposition. And Odaiba, a site in Tokyo, where surely the national government would never allow such a base to be built. In late December, I visited the beach where an Osprey had crashed just a week earlier. Thankfully, no one was hurt or killed other than the pilot, and no severe damage to Okinawan homes or businesses or anything. Makishi's piece reminded me of a work by Shiro Makiko from 1968, entitled A Nettai no Shima Kara, or From a Subtropical Island. This piece is also currently on display at the Prefectural Museum right now, as part of a chronological exhibit on the history of Okinawan art. Now, I've seen this piece in catalogs many times, and I always assumed it was just a painting. But now that I've seen it in person, this is not painted on. This is an actual metal piece of a military aircraft, attached somehow up onto a panel, a wooden panel. And the piece references, in particular, an incident in 1959, just 9 years before this piece was made, when an F-100 Super Sabre fighter jet crashed into Miyamori Elementary School in Okinawa, killing 11 students and 6 other people in the surrounding neighborhood, and injuring more than 200 others. But of course, not all Okinawan art is so expressly political. Another exhibit that I saw early this past fall was of works by professors from the Okinawa Prefectural University of the Arts. The university is situated on the former location of the studios and workshops employed by court artists, artisans, performers for the Ryukyu kingdom. People who produced lacquerwares, textiles, music, and dance for the royal court. Today, that same site is home to the leading art institution in the islands, and actually the only dedicated University of the Arts anywhere west of Hiroshima. And there, at the Okinawa University of the Arts, they train students not only in producing theoretical, conceptual works in the tradition of modern art or postmodern art, but also in maintaining those centuries-old traditions of uniquely Okinawan forms of dance, music, pottery, lacquerware, textiles, calligraphy, and ink painting. Here we have a piece by one of the university's professors, Ogawa Kei, a roughly 4 by 2.5 foot piece of hemp cloth covered over in shiny black lacquer entitled Time and Space No. 4. I personally really love the way that so many Okinawan artists bring the traditional into the contemporary, into the postmodern. These methods, these materials, these motifs, these designs do not belong solely to the past. Just because they're traditional doesn't mean that they belong solely to the past. They belong to the present just as much as anything else does. Just as anything more Western does. Western does not equal modern. I love that. I see it as a megaphone, really, blaring at the world. This is real. We are here. Our culture, our traditions, our heritage are just as much a part of the modern world, and just as much a part of modern art, or perhaps I should say postmodern art, as anything more aculturally abstract or conceptual. While so many people all around the world continue to praise and prefer works that could have been made by anyone, that show no evidence of a particular national, ethnic, historical, or cultural referent or origin, meanwhile, Okinawans are making works that speak to Okinawan identity, history, and culture, adding so many layers of meaning beyond what an acultural work ever could. Anyone can do a blank black square in paint or in whatever other media and call it time and space, evoking ideas of a void, of an endless darkness without beginning or end, and inspiring us to think about what that might suggest in broad philosophical or theoretical terms. But Ogawa Kei does it in lacquer, blurring lines, I feel, between whether this should be seen as a conceptual art piece or a traditional craft piece. If I showed you the exact same object, weighted horizontally, and said it was a 200-year-old platter, for use in a royal court, would it still evoke time and space? Even if that older traditional object did evoke time and space for you, would it do so in a different way because it comes from a different historical cultural context? Because of the use of a traditional Okinawan method and media, what might this piece say about time and space differently from other pieces? What might it say specifically about the Okinawan experience, Okinawan history and culture? And what might that piece say differently to an American viewer, an Okinawan viewer, a Japanese viewer, a Chinese viewer of the artwork. Finally, I'd like to close by just mentioning two galleries in Okinawa that I love to visit over and over again. These are the Naha Shimin, or Naha Citizens Gallery, and the Okinawa Kenmin, or Prefectural Citizens Gallery. Both are spaces created explicitly to be rented and used by pretty much anyone for their own exhibits. I've seen all kinds of groups, from high schools to calligraphy circles to professional artists, rent out this space to show their works, and you never know what you're going to find. Even if any one of these artists that I talked about today were to get picked up and get shown at the Met or LACMA, that exhibit would be only the very tip of the iceberg that is the vibrant, diverse, complex, extensive world of Okinawan art. There is so much going on out there in the world beyond California, beyond the US, and London, and Paris, and Tokyo, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity to get out there and see it, and the opportunity to bring it back and share it with all of you. Thank you very much.